Is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And good morning, Kentucky. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice live on 970 WGTK and at 4 p.m. on WBNA TV 21. I'm your host, Bob Scott. It's August the 18th, and I'm glad you're with us as we start a brand new week of news, politics, and straight talk about what's happening here in the Commonwealth and our great nation. You can join in the show by texting us at 502-571-0970. Again, that text line number is 502-571-0970. Or if you believe in the mission of Kentucky's Voice and want to financially support us, you can do so by texting us at KY Voice 53555. Again, that's KY Voice 53555. On a personal note, my family and I are preparing for a very special trip later this week. We're heading down to San Antonio, Texas, to see my oldest son, Luke, and his good friend, Will Sullivan, graduate from the United States Air Force Security Forces Officer Skills Training. Needless to say, we are very proud of our Kentucky boys and all the graduates beyond words. Their hard work, dedication, and faith have brought them here, and I couldn't be more excited to see them reach this milestone as they all serve our great nation. Now on today's program, we're joined by a familiar guest and friend of the show, Kentucky State Representative John Hodgson. John has been at the center of some of the biggest debates in Frankfort this past year and before that. And today we'll dive into several key issues that matter not only to Kentucky, but to our our great nation as well. In our first segment, we'll start with a powerful clip and then talk about the growing scandal involving illegal immigrants obtaining Kentucky's driver's licenses, a story now making, unfortunately, national headlines. And it's really raising serious questions about Andy Beshear's administration in the Department of Transportation. We'll also cover the upcoming state Senate and 6th District Congressional races. We'll take a closer look at new legislation on voter rolls and geo-engineering. And finally, we'll tackle recent comments by Louisville Metro Councilwoman Shamika Parrish-Wright about homelessness, public safety, and President Trump's executive order. 4 big conversations ahead, and I promise you won't want to miss any of them. So let's get started. The major news right now, as mentioned, involves an incredible scandal in a bad way involving the Beshear administration that is making national news due, honestly, and I have to say this, to the great reporting by Gilbert Corsi of WDRB TV, and a very, very brave whistleblower who was fired from her job for speaking out. Please play clip 1.
Didn't want this out. Fraud inside Kentucky's transportation cabinet. Licenses issued without a driver's test.
It is an ongoing WDRB investigation, and tonight we hear from a whistleblower who says coworkers used her login to pull off this scheme.
Employees were being paid underneath the table.
They say sometimes
I immediately let my supervisor know about it.
truth hurts.
Did you ever think that this would cost you your job?
No,
And for Melissa Mormon,
I was angry for a long time.
this is one of those.
It hurts me that I'm talking about this and I actually like where I was working at.
Times.
I came into the office that day, my computer was shut down. I was told to go to the front door. Detectives came in, they interviewed me. That was it.
Mormon says she was fired 3 months after she sent this letter to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, blowing the whistle that workers at the NIA Center licensing branch were selling driver's licenses under the table to people who never took the driver's test.
Undocumented workers.
How did it work? What was going on?
The undocumented workers would come into the office in groups. They would provide them either permits or driver's license illegally. So they were bypassed without even taking the test.
How much?
$200 a person.
Up to 5 times a day, she says.
Was this an everyday thing?
Almost, yes.
And again, that was a very brave whistleblower, Melissa Mormon, calling, light to a very illegal and bad situation that was happening within the Beshear administration through their Kentucky Department of Transportation. And Representative Hodgson, you've been, I know, following this scandal very closely. What do we know so far about how illegal immigrants were able to obtain Kentucky driver's licenses?
Well, it looks like there were somewhere around 2,000 who did that. We don't know for sure because the Beshear administration won't release the records. I believe the Attorney General, as well as other people, have asked to see those records. I mean, clearly that is illegal. Not the first time the NIA Center has been brought to my attention. This is also a place where felons that have just been released from prison can go apply for a driver's license, and the NIA Center will give them a driver's license, even though and automatically register them to vote under the Federal Motor Voter Act. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're not using any extreme caution to avoid that. Sometimes the felons don't read the fine print and just sign the bottom, then they get a postcard in the mail that says, "Come vote in our election," which, of course, if they do, is a felony in itself and violates their parole. So it's putting those recently released people that are typically in some kind of a rehab halfway house situation, putting them in a terrible position. And I don't think the NIA Center exercises much care. So I'm not shocked to see this driver's license scandal here. I think Miss Melissa Moorman is a hero for coming forward, and I hope that she engages in a massive lawsuit against the state for wrongful termination under the whistleblower statute. But these things are happening. They're not just happening in Kentucky. We saw news yesterday of a illegal immigrant getting issued a license in California and doing a U-turn in a tractor trailer and killing several people on the freeway. So we have got to get a grip on our society and restore public order. And we live by the rule of the law, and if we don't have the rule of law here in public order, we're going to devolve into third world.
Yeah, and that's I think some of the efforts that are being made on the other side to make that very thing happen. And of course, the situation you just mentioned, where sadly 4 people died because of an illegal immigrant who was issued a driving license, not just a driving license, but, the ability to drive a big rig truck. And that happened in Florida, where Florida is very, very stringent on regulations down there. But that just goes to show that if something happens in one state or something illegal like that, that would be illegal in another state, but not necessarily illegal right now in California, how the reverberations of that can impact really and affect us all.
That's right. And I think that license was issued in California and the accident happened in Florida. So
that's correct. Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's what's scary. Governor Beshear's administration, John, and the Kentucky DOT are, whether they like it or not, they're at the center of this. And it's my understanding this investigation or questions have been asked, as you mentioned, for a while, but I know at least since April. And obviously, this situation was brought to their attention by Melissa Moorman, and sadly, instead of saying, "Hey," congratulating her and lifting her up, as is the case in a lot of whistleblower situations, she paid the ultimate price with having her employment terminated. What can we do about this? And as far as getting to the bottom of this?
Well, certainly we have to continue to investigate. Our law enforcement agencies headed by the Attorney General have to dig into that. I've initiated some investigation, talking to the director of the Kentucky Board of Elections, saying, "Hey, these people that got driver's licenses, illegal aliens, did they also get registered to vote? Because there's a Federal Motor Voter Act
Yes.
when you get a license." So we are investigating that. I'm, Vice Chair of the Elections Committee. We'll be hearing testimony on that at a future meeting and seeing what that investigation turns up, because it's quite possible we got 2,000 illegal aliens put on the voter rolls by these illegal actions. Somebody accepted a bribe. The management of the NIA Center and some other places allowed it to happen. And those people could not just be driving illegally, but voting illegally. We've got to get a grip on this.
And you just mentioned it. And again, it affects so many things. It sets off a chain reaction,
That's right.
Mentioning election integrity, security. And as we've just seen, road safety from your perspective. And we have a little bit over a minute and a half to go. From your perspective, is this a matter of incompetence or something more that is deliberate?
I think certainly simple incompetence is at play. We've seen the disaster that has been evolving for 6 years with having to wait months to get an appointment to get a driver's license. 50 years ago, I could get a driver's license by somebody that had a camera and a typewriter and an eye test, and I'd spend a half an hour at the DMV and walk out with a license. And somehow now, after 6 years of the Beshear administration, you still can't get a driver's license and without driving a long way and having a huge wait. So incompetence is certainly a factor. I don't know why they haven't fixed that. I can just say elections have consequences, and we hired the wrong guy. I think a competent governor could have fixed that a long time ago. But I think there is also a push from the left that they want everybody to vote. Everybody that's here in this country, legal, illegal, felon, non-felon, qualified, unqualified, they want them all voting because they're expecting them to vote Democrat. And those two things are tied together here. I think the motor voter law has been disastrous around this country. Yeah,
and that's absolutely correct. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice. My special guest today is Kentucky State Representative John Hodgson. We will be right back with more. In fact, we'll be talking about the Kentucky Senate and 6 congressional races when we do come back.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today, Kentucky State Representative John Hodgson. You can join in the show by texting us at 502-571-0970. Or if you believe in the mission of Kentucky's Voice and want to financially support us, you can do so by texting us at KYVoice 53555. And we actually have, John, already gotten a text in, and the text is referring to our last segment where we were talking about the Beshear administration scandal involving the Department of Transportation issuing license to illegal immigrants for $200 a pop. I don't know how much truth necessarily is in this, but this explains how the Uber drivers get a license without being able to speak or read English. They don't have to take the test. Thanks, Beshear. I don't know if it's quite to that point, but it is interesting. And thank you for your text. We do try to read them all, folks, as you just heard. I will tell you, John, we are looking and I guess segueing over to the upcoming U.S. Senate race. And I really want to take a deep dive into that because I know you're very intimately involved with that. I do have a clip from Fox News that I would like to share involving that race. It's getting national attention. Please play clip 3.
Well, the race for Mitch McConnell's Senate seat is shaping up. Former Attorney General of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, and current Congressman Andy Barr are among the Republican challengers for this soon-to-be open seat. But the other top contender is businessman Nate Morris, and he joins me now. Nate, you're a very fascinating candidate. I've followed your race, and obviously this is the former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's seat, a heralded seat, and you've got David Cameron, very popular, as is Congressman Barr in his Lexington district. But you are sort of the outside lane guy, and you have remarkable support from J.D. Vance. People paint you as the J.D. Vance candidate. Why is that?
Well, that's very high praise. And, Griff, this race is about 2 career politicians versus an outside business guy I've never run for office before. And I saw this race shaking out to be, we're going to get more of the same if I don't get in this race. And my 2 opponents, they literally owe everything to Mitch McConnell. And I said, enough is enough. We've got to have a break. We've got to have a change. And in the spirit of President Trump and my friend J.D. Vance, they've come from the outside, and they've had tremendous success. And I think America is tired of career politicians running up our debt, getting us into these globalist wars, and opening up our border wide open. And we can't have that anymore. We've got to have something totally different. And that's why I'm in this race and ready to shake it up.
Well, in your personal story, your life experience also tracks parallel to that of Vice President Vance.
Well, Griff, I'm like a lot of Kentuckians. I've been fighting for everything I have, and 19 of my family members worked in an auto plant in Louisville building cars, and I had the unique experience to grow up around that of the American worker and to see it firsthand. And when things like NAFTA happened, I saw people that I know lose their job, lose their livelihood because of bad trade deals. And I saw a leader in President Trump that is finally speaking for the American worker and people like my family. And that's why I'm so inspired by what he's doing. And I'm proud that people make that comparison. It's very kind. And like JD, I'm going to go and be an outsider and shake it up with President Trump.
Okay, John, I got to ask you this question. You were a very outspoken supporter of Daniel Cameron when he last ran for governor against Andy Beshear. Of course, sadly, he lost. But you're now backing Nate Morris. Why the switch, and what do you see as the defining issues shaping this contest?
Well, I do think the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race are two very different races, different qualifications for the office. Daniel Cameron was a very popular office holder as Attorney General, and he was going to change seats and go into the governor's seat. Unfortunately, like I say, he lost that race. We remain friendly, but I believe that the U.S. Senate race is very different because that job, you're not the leader of a state with all kinds of Republican legislature backing you up and all kinds of Republican staff and appointees backing you up. You're up there in Washington where you're one of 100 and you're one of only, 52 or 3 Republicans. It's like a knife fight in a phone booth up there. And it takes somebody who's very tough, very savvy. Nate has grown up in an absolutely cutthroat business, the garbage business that's dominated by billionaires and the mafia. And he knows how to fight. And I want somebody that can fight. And he's used to being, lied to and people trying to trick him and people trying to push him in a corner and intimidate him. And I think he's going to survive very well in that kind of environment.
And you make a good point. The garbage business is rough and tumble. Anybody that's ever seen any information on that, watch any mafia movie, you can come up to speed on it pretty quick. But what do you think are going to be the defining issues in this race? That literally are coming. That's going to be important to the everyday Kentuckian.
I think the media is very much framing this up as Team MAGA against Team McConnell, kind of the traditionalist, don't rock the boat. McConnell's done a great job kind of folks versus the disruptors that are saying we're pro-Trump, we're pro-America, we're pro-MAGA. And that has become the defining issue. Nate grew up in and around my district, went to school in and around my district before he went off and, made his fortune. So I know a lot of people he knows. I know the people he grew up with, people he worked with, people he went to school with. And I think he represents the kind of values we have in Kentucky, especially that working class Republican that's having to scrap for everything they've got. They've watched the rich people getting breaks. They've watched the billionaires get breaks. They've watched the non-working people, receiving welfare checks and food stamps. It's like, when are we going to take care of the working men in this country? NAFTA gutted manufacturing. When I moved to Louisville in 1985, it was a very manufacturing heavy city. And you could have a family and several children and send them all to school on a good income from a manufacturing job. And that largely evaporated over the last 30 years due to NAFTA. And I think we've got to bring it back. We've got to be America first. Nate has come out very much in favor of not just sealing the border, but putting a moratorium on immigration. That's a pretty hard stance. He's also a big backer of the tariffs and everything that Trump is doing to put America first in manufacturing. So I think he's demonstrating his ability to be a disruptor and to step out there and go against what's comfortable for people. And I like that. And obviously the status quo is not where we want to be. I like the direction Trump is going. I like America first. I like MAGA. And I think Nate is going to be a champion for that.
Well, and another national race that really is getting tons upon tons of attention from the national media is the 6th District Congressional seat involving State Representative Ryan Dotson, former State Senator Ralph Alvarado, who's also recently been the Tennessee Health Department Commissioner and has resigned from that position, obviously, since he's planning on running over here. And then you have also Kentucky State Representative Deanna Gordon, among the Republicans. And as I mentioned, it is drawing a lot of attention. What dynamics are in play there?
Yeah, there again, like the Senate race, I've got three friends and colleagues running against each other there. So the 6th district is a little bit alien to me. That's greater Lexington area. But I think you do have a difference in the candidates. Ralph probably represents that more traditional. He was a state senator here in Kentucky. Worked, he ran with Governor Bevin in 2019 as his running mate. More of a traditionalist. I think Ryan Dotson is a little bit more of a little more rural. Probably has more of the religious Kentucky roots, family values kind of orientation. He's a fighter. I work with him in the legislature. Deanna Gordon is also a strong legislator, and she's got a little bit different perspective too. I'm not planning to pick a horse in that race because it is the sixth district, and I work with two of them, and I'll be in the legislature, voting with them for the 60-day session. So, but I think all three of them would do a good job ultimately.
And we have only about a minute to go in this segment, but how does this impact? As far as they all say they're essentially MAGA Trump people, all of them,
Right.
Do you think Trump's going to endorse anybody? And if he does, who? What's your feelings, real quick?
Well, I think Trump probably would endorse in these races. It's certainly not a certainty. There have been places where he's endorsed 2 or even 3 candidates, which can really get confusing. He typically is going to come in a little bit later when a clear leader has emerged. If that leader aligns with him, endorse him. So, remains to be seen what the Donald will do.
As always, that's for sure. Well, stay tuned, folks. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. My special guest today is Kentucky State Representative John Hodgson. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. You can join in the show today by texting us at 502-571-0970. Or if you believe in the mission of Kentucky's Voice and want to financially support us, you can do so by texting us at KY Voice 53555. My very special guest today is Kentucky State Representative John Hodgson from District 36 in Louisville. I have a short clip that Representative Hodgson recently recorded. If we would, please play that clip.
Hi, I'm John Hodgson, State Representative, District 36 in Eastern Jefferson County. I've got some good news to share on election integrity. My House Bill 44 from last year has yielded some excellent results from the Kentucky Board of Elections on cleaning up our Kentucky voter rolls. Now, for the first time, you can view online the details of how over 750,000 ineligible voters have been removed from the rolls in the last 4 years. Some are dead, some have moved, some have become felons or were judged mentally incompetent. Check this great work out for yourself at the Kentucky Board of Elections Election Integrity website at the link shown on your screen. The Kentucky Board of Elections has also published a new voter residency list for every county that's available at the link shown on your screen. For the first time, you'll be able to look up an address and see how many registered voters are linked to that address. There's no personal identifying information at all, just the raw number. If you see something that looks odd, like 4 people registered at your home where only 2 people live, you can report that discrepancy via a new online form at the link shown on your screen. Elections belong to all of us that are U.S. citizens and eligible voters. We all need to work together with our county clerks and Board of Elections to make sure our voter rolls get cleaned up and stay cleaned up. I hope you'll take some time to review these new online public resources and join in the ongoing effort to ensure transparency and integrity in our Kentucky elections. Thank you for watching.
And John, there it is. Something I know that you've been working very hard on ever since you became a Kentucky State Representative. And it is something that has come a long way since you've been there. And something really that the voters have demanded, not just nationally, but obviously here in our state. Why? Seems like a simple question, but why was this necessary? And the critical question is, how will it now be enforced?
Well, the previous Secretary of State, Allison Grimes, was rampantly violating the law. I think, her own father ended up going to federal prison for election-related violations. But we were put under a consent decree. The state of Kentucky was in 2019 by a federal judge. Said, you guys are so messed up. You've got to go clean up these rolls. You've got to publish what you're doing, make it available to the public. When I got in the legislature, I identified the fact that while we were making some progress cleaning up the rolls, that information was not being made available to the public the way it was supposed to be. So I wrote House Bill 44 to compel the Board of Elections and Secretary of State's office to work together and put that information out in a readily accessible way on the website. And I think everybody's been happy with that. Sometimes things need a little bit of extra push in government because, it takes time, takes money, but you can now see everything every month. You can see all the numbers of voters have been removed for all reasons, how many are still registered. You can look up your own home address and see how many people are registered there. I talked to people that said, I've been living in this house for 10 years and there's still 4 extra people registered that moved out years ago or died, and they're still there. Why are they there? Why aren't they gone? And now you can check that out at your own house. If you have a question, or if you happen to see the vacant lot across the street's got 12 people registered to it, you might, ask that question and fill out the form and ask somebody to go look. But it takes continuous vigilance to keep our voter rolls clean, because every day people move, people die, people become ineligible, and people try to cheat, and people will always try to cheat. And we as citizens need to work in conjunction with the Board of Election, with the county clerk, to try to catch those folks and get them removed from the rolls. So I think this is a big step towards transparency. I think this is exactly what I wanted as a citizen, and I had to go to the trouble of getting elected and getting to be vice chair of the elections committee to get it done.
Yeah, they put you, from the frying pan to the fire, right?
That's right.
There.
That's right.
And the sad thing, John, you mentioned it's a continual process. People are always trying to figure out ways to cheat, and that's so sad, to really think about it. You would hope that wouldn't be the case, but it is the case, correct?
It is the case, and it's human nature, and I guess I'm not mad about it anymore. I just expect it. And I think my role on the elections committee is as people come up with new ways to try to cheat, we've got to come up with new ways to try to catch them, try to prevent it, try to catch them, try to prosecute them once it's done. So we have also established an Office of Election Crimes and Integrity in the Attorney General's office. So when we find a violator, like some of these driver's license things we talked about, there's a unit in the Attorney General's office to prosecute those people. And we've got to start seeing people serve hard jail time for these election crimes. And I think that will go a long way to discouraging people from doing that in the future.
I can't imagine why anybody would be against this, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. I really honestly can't imagine that, but there are some.
There are some.
Usually from the other side of the aisle, that are claiming that this is going to disenfranchise voters. How do you respond to those concerns?
Well, I would say that I've written a number of election bills, and we've passed a number through our committee. They typically are passing not by a slim margin, but by 80, 90, 95% of the vote, and some are signed by the governor. So there are some voices that will try to claim disenfranchisement. I think that's just noise. It's not. If you talk to the person on the street and go, hey, do you have an ID? Do you mind showing your ID to vote? They're like, of course not. That's what we want. Of course I have an ID. You can't do anything in this country without an ID. So I don't think it's disenfranchising at all, and I don't think anybody serious about this issue thinks it's disenfranchising. They're just banging the trash can lid for to make a political point.
And we hear a lot about technology, especially AI lately has been the conversation. And really, what role does technology play in keeping elections secure and voter rolls accurate?
I think I'm an engineer in my background, and I think the best solution is when you have an element of technology that's automating a process for you and tracking stuff, but then you have the ability to come in with humans and audit what happened. So one of my bills last year, House Bill 53, we let the tabulators scan and tabulate the votes and print out results on election night, and those are fixed in time, signed by the election officers, taped to the door. But then we come back in a couple of days with a sworn-in team. We break open that machine, and we hand count with hands and eyeballs a select segment of that race and make sure that it matches the tally that was there on election night, every vote in that machine on a particular race. And we did that in 120 counties, witnessed by the public, videotaped, and we did not find any significant discrepancies across the state. So that gives people a measure of security. But I think you need both. There are a lot of voices that say we need to have 100% hand counting, but where are you going to find thousands of honest people that can sit there and hand count ballots for 80 hours, to get that job done? So I think the best solution, the gold standard in my mind, again, as an engineer, somebody that's worked in quality control, is you do the machine count first, and then you come back with a random hand audit to verify the machine count, because humans are never going to be able to count as fast as a tabulator. But other people care about stuff like this. Banks and casinos, what do? They use a machine to count, and then they also use a hand count to verify.
Yep. Amen to that. We did get from the text line. It's kind of referring back to our last segment. And the texter says, boy, that's rich giving out licenses. Wonder if any were CDL. And we know the California situation it was. We must wait in line for hours just to renew them. And I guarantee you it was probably like that in every state once the word got around that a license could be bought illegally. And this, again, is something that's been a problem, and it is a problem, with regard to some states doing things that would be illegal in other states,
Right.
So any thoughts about that text?
Well, I think he's right on target. And I think reciprocity between the states exposes Kentucky drivers to whatever foolishness they do in California. And I think we have to have smarter voters and elect better people all across this country, but particularly we need to keep our own house clean. And we need to prosecute everybody involved in the chain of this. People need to do hard jail time for this.
Yeah, and I'll get to some. We're getting a lot of text today, so that's good. I know we must be over target when that starts happening, but I do want to get in this segment, and I promise we'll get to your texts that you've sent in, shifting gears with regard to legislation involving geoengineering that we're hearing a lot about. That. And I know it's something you've been at the forefront on, and it's something that Kentuckians are just learning about, but they are getting up to speed on it. But you are in the process of coming back, and I guess in the next legislative session, and bringing some legislation forth regarding that.
Yes, Senator Steve Rawlings and I worked on a bill for this last year that did not get a hearing, disappointingly, and we're going to do that again. But we actually have a hearing scheduled for the 29th of August in the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. So we're going to get this subject aired out. We're going to talk about it. What geoengineering is the pseudoscience of injecting materials into the upper atmosphere. And I'm talking 35,000 to 50,000 feet that will reflect sunlight. It's called stratospheric aerosol injection. We're going to try to reflect sunlight back into space and cool off the Earth, for the whole green agenda, which is crazy because whatever you inject up there will eventually precipitate down and fall on our farmland and get into our food. So I don't want that over the skies of Kentucky. Governments around the world, private actors and NGOs have expressed interest in this. Some are already experimenting with this. This is really a Kentucky sovereignty statement. We're saying, you got your half-brained experiments playing God. We don't want them over the skies of Kentucky. Stop. Tennessee has passed a law. Florida has passed a law. And this will make it a felony with a $500,000 fine for doing such activities. I will specify for those who are concerned about it's a conspiracy theory. The EPA has put out a website fully disclosing everything that we know about geoengineering and what the attempts there are there. There is a distinction, though. The white lines you see in the sky that follow jet airplanes on humid days, those are called contrails, condensation trails. This bill specifically exempts any exhaust from a normal jet aircraft engine or from a ground source. This is about a different thing. This is what the White House paper talked about with solar radiation modification. This, blocking sunlight or attempting to modify the weather is what we're making outlawed. So you'll hear the term contrails a lot. And that's discussed on the EPA website. And I would encourage everybody to go to that EPA geoengineering website and spend an hour going through that stuff.
Yeah, and I would encourage that too, John. I think that's very important that folks go take a look at that. And, it's funny that yesterday's conspiracy theories, a lot of times, not always, but more often than not, turn out to be today's facts, and this is something that, all Kentuckians need to continue to pay attention. And glad to see you and your colleagues looking at taking this up, because this does have obviously a huge potential impact, on us, because as you mentioned, what goes up must come down, and we know that what's being sprayed in the air has a chance to come down and get into our food sources, into our lungs, as we're out and about breathing into our water supply. So bravo to you guys for doing this. If you're listening to Kentucky's Voice, we'll be back with our final segment with my special guest.
Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to the final segment of Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today being State Representative John Hodgson. You can join in the show by texting us at 502-571-0970. Or if you believe in the mission of Kentucky's Voice and want to financially support us, you can do so by texting us at KY-VOICE 53555. And John, with the whole idea of texting being in mind, we have gotten a couple texts in. I did promise I would read them. I'm going to do so now. The first one comes to us, and they ask, I guess really making a statement, Nate Morris's generosity of a college scholarship in his high school should not be ignored. Did you know he had a scholarship set up for his kids to go to his high school?
You know, I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. He went to Eastern High School in my district, and he was the student body president there. So he has a lot of fond memories of Eastern. I'm glad to see him doing that to help kids coming up.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then another question or text that came in, a good reminder for citizens is when a relative dies, and this is really pertaining to the segment we were just discussing or had discussed about what's happening with regard to voting and voter rolls. But anyway, they go on to say when a relative dies or moves out of state, tell them to take them off the voter rolls. Information on how to remove them needs to be made easy.
Yeah, if you follow the link that I put on the screen there is a form now that we got put on for self-removal, just to attest that you have moved. You can't attest that you've died. We will figure that part out, but you can. You know, my grandfather voted Republican all his life till he died, and then he voted Democrat from then on. So it's the old joke.
Yeah, but, and it's good news. He's no longer still voting. So
that's right.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's really good to know. It is really evidently something relatively simple, for folks to do.
Right.
Good deal. Good deal. Lot to talk about in this final segment. Recently a Louisville council member, Shamika Parrish Wright, did criticize President Trump's executive order dealing with the homelessness issues plaguing our nation. And strangely enough, it seems to be mainly Democrat-run big cities like Louisville that are being impacted with regard to this. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were with regard to Councilwoman Shamika Parrish Wright's claim that President Trump's executive order is about criminalizing homelessness. Why is that incorrect?
Well, I did have a lot of thoughts to share on that, and I actually wrote a letter to the Courier-Journal, asked them to publish that as a counterpoint to what Parrish Wright did, and they didn't even call me back. So I'm glad that Channel 21 here has given me equal time for the response. But what we did here in Kentucky closely parallels to what Trump calls for in the executive order. We did not criminalize homelessness. There's no crime in being homeless. What we did was say you cannot sleep in a non-designated area like a sidewalk or a street or a park or a cemetery. You can go to places where it's lawful to camp, and you can live in a tent there if, for whatever reason you need to do that. And that starts with a citation. First, the police officer just say you need to move along and not be here. And by the way, can we help you find some services? We've got shelters, we got veterans benefits, we got rehab centers. How can we help you get something? And Officer Caleb Stewart runs that part of the police force. He does a great job here in Louisville with that. But if the person is recalcitrant, if they don't want to cooperate, if they become belligerent, they can get a ticket. If they escalate that to the next level, it can result in an arrest. But even if you somehow ended up in jail, you didn't want to move, you got belligerent, you got arrested, you ended up in jail, the judges all have the ability to divert you into a rehab program as an alternative to incarceration. And people will try to tell you, oh, homeless people are just like everybody else. It's just a person that doesn't have a home. Well, that is false on its face, because a very high percentage, I'm going to say 70, 80, some people say 90% of the people that are chronically homeless on the street, sleeping on the sidewalk, have severe mental issues or drug abuse problems. And that's the primary reason they are homeless. It's not that they just, if Bob Scott woke up one day and his house burned down, didn't have a place to live, I feel sure by nightfall he would have plenty of friends and relatives that would say, Bob, you can come, sleep on my couch in my spare bedroom. You wouldn't be homeless for 24 hours. But if you're a person who abuses drugs, that's got social adaptation problems, the number of opportunities like that to you are pretty small, because people's like, you're not going to come across a problem at my house. And what we have done is there's a pernicious program that's referred to as Housing First that was advocated by the Obama administration and by the Biden administration. And that says homelessness has nothing to do with your behavior. You just come and we're going to give you a dry, comfortable, safe place to go live your life, and you can continue using drugs. You can continue your criminal activities. You can continue in non-treatment. And we're going to have the taxpayers pay for that. We can't require anything of you. Well, the bill we passed, House Bill 5, a couple of years ago, said that's not going to happen in Kentucky with state funds. If we are providing people with something, there has to be a component in there of behavior modification, rehabilitation, cessation of drug use, something of that nature. And now the Trump executive order backs that up. We're going to stop wasting money giving people a safe, dry, comfortable place to go shoot up their drugs and invite their friends in for criminal activity. That's crazy. We've seen places out west spend as much as $600,000 per homeless person, I think, in San Francisco to put them up. And what do? They continue to use drugs in that hotel room or apartment they get and invite their friends in, and it gets worse. They get more homeless people, not less. So you get more of what you subsidize and you get less of what you penalize. A lot of people who are out on the street could get help. They could get mental help. They could get drug rehab help. They could get job training, and they could move on and become productive citizens. Some perhaps can't. And another part of the Trump executive order says we need to relook at long-term involuntary confinement. If you're a person with such severe issues that at 3 o'clock every afternoon you rip your clothes off and run naked down Main Street, that's a little bit disruptive to society. It tends to, cause a problem for local businesses. And maybe that person needs to be in a permanent supportive living situation where they've got 3 square meals a day and a bed, and people who are making sure they get their medications and, and get counseling or rehab or whatever they need. And that's a lot of what Trump's executive order was calling for. We're not just going to let you lie on the street in mental illness and drug addiction and die as you spiral down and slowly die over the next 10 to 20 years. There's nothing compassionate in that. So we're going to require that you get help if you get help with your problems, if you get help from the state with housing, and that for the people that just cannot adapt, we need a long-term shelter situation for them, long-term supportive housing. I think those stopped existing in about 1980. At the end of the Carter administration, start of the Reagan administration, there were, a system, they called them asylums. There were problems, but they put all those out of business, and the people that were too mentally ill to be on the street were released. And some of those people live on the streets, and we get new people that are too mentally ill to live on the street, and they're living out there. And that's not good for them. It's not good for society. It's not good for the economy. We don't want to punish the 99 just to let the one run free and make it down Main Street.
Yeah, and a good point. And President Trump's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Big surprise that no one should really be surprised about. And you said a second ago, opponents like to bring up that this is something to punish the poor. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, it absolutely is not. It's there are plenty of shelter opportunities. I believe we reached the point in Louisville where there are 0 families that are without shelter, that are in a homeless situation. And
That's
people
incredible.
Do have problems.
That's incredible.
We've put millions and millions of dollars into this. The mayor's office is doing a good job. We want to give people a hand up. We don't want to give them a handout. We don't want to enable their addiction and their mental illness to go on forever, because they will eventually spiral down, cost society a lot of money. They will die in a miserable situation. But it's not just them. They're going to take a lot of people down with them. The San Diego police found that an unhoused or an unsheltered homeless person, somebody sleeping chronically on the sidewalk, is something like 400 times more likely to commit a crime than the average citizen. So, because that's how they make their living. They're going to panhandle. They're going to do pilfering. We've had rapes in Louisville from broad daylight from a homeless guy that slept in the alley by the Yum Center. So a lot of these petty crimes, a lot of things that make it a miserable place for people to go to lunch as business people, for conventioneers. If we want to have a thriving downtown scene, we've got to have the unsheltered homeless situation under control. And people that need help need to get help. They need to get rehab. They need to go to shelters. They need to get mental health counseling. And you can't just leave them running on the streets doing whatever they want.
And, obviously mental health and substance abuse are the 2 major things that play into reducing homelessness and public safety risks. So you feel, and in fact, I guess that would be my big question is, how do you feel Kentucky is doing with regard to this since the legislation, House Bill 5 was passed, and as we are right now as a state moving forward?
We actually have more substance abuse recovery beds per capita than any state in the union. So we have ample resources for people to get into rehab if they want to get.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Even
That's
the governor
powerful.
touts. Yep, the governor touts that all the time. Now this has been, our Appalachian area has been the hotbed of opioid abuse, and so it makes sense that we've got that many beds. But there are ample resources to go into recovery if you want. If somebody wants to get well, they can access those resources, and there's Medicaid will pay for the first 30 days. They've got private people that'll pay after that. You get job retraining. If you want to get well, there's somebody in Kentucky that's going to help you get well. If you want to, stay on the street injecting opioids and be a menace to society, we're going to not allow that as an ordered society. We're going to try to get you better. If you refuse to get better, you may go to prison. You may go to a long-term care facility. But we can't have a successful ordered society when it's not safe for people to be on the street. I think what we do with House Bill 5 is in lockstep with Trump. We have seen results in Louisville. The number of unsafe encampments over a year is down 80%. The number of, where somebody's encamping like on the sidewalk in front of the children's hospital, blocking people in their wheelchairs from getting to the hospital, that kind of crazy thing. The police report that these chronic addicts are now starting to get help. The rehab facilities say they got more formerly homeless people coming in, getting rehab. The complaints about homeless encampments are down about 40%. So while there may be more individuals still in crisis in general, the level of the crisis is less. They are perhaps a less of a danger to the public now that we've passed this law. And I think overall it discourages people from adopting that as a lifestyle to the extent that it's their choice.
Yeah, awesome. Well, listen, John, that does wrap up today's edition of Kentucky's Voice. I want to thank my guest, State Representative John Hodgson, for joining us and sharing his insights on the issues shaping our state, from election integrity to public safety to holding our leaders accountable. These aren't just headlines. They're matters that affect your family, your community, and the future of the Commonwealth. And as always, we'll continue to ask the tough questions that make a difference. And on a personal note, as I prepare to head to San Antonio this week to see my son Luke and his friend Will graduate from the Air Force Security Forces Officer Training School, I'm reminded of the values that make Kentucky and America strong: faith, family, service, and commitment to something greater than ourselves. Thank you for spending part of this Monday with me. Back next time. God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
Amen. Thanks, Bob.